Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: the future of KCI still up in the air. Ditto the earnings tax in Kansas City as another effort to stop it begins. And is it the beginning of the end for the GOP's White House aspirations in 2016? Plus, of course, roast and toast. But we start with our interview segment and welcome Arif Ahmad from the Islamic Center of Johnson County. News is replete with stories about the Islamic faith, some positive, some quite negative. GOP presidential frontrunner Donald Trump is calling for a ban on all Muslims entering the country until, as he says, we can figure out what the hell is going on. Trump's comments came after two Islamic extremists, one born in this country, one an immigrant, killed 14 and injured 22 in San Bernardino, California at a Christmas party. How are local Muslims reacting? Are politicians overreacting? Is the president underreacting? We'll touch on those items and more as we welcome Arif Ahmad. Sir, thank you for joining us on Ruckus.
Thank you for having me.
You're quoted in the Kansas City Star as saying Donald Trump's comments, as bad as they may have been in your opinion, do give you the chance, and I'll quote you here, to state openly, publicly, and loudly that we are completely separate from these murderers, whether they are in Paris or Beirut or California. Now, we'll ask you to state openly and publicly, but not too loudly, because we can hear you quite well, your thoughts about Donald Trump and what he had to say.
Well, I think in one of the other interviews, I did make a comment saying Donald Trump's statements do not really merit a response. You respond only to intelligent comments that have any substance, but his comments are off-the-cuff comments, and why should only the Muslims respond? Tell me one group that he has spared. And he
well,
goes,
there's only one group he said to ban from entry into the United States, and that group is the Muslim group.
True, but his rhetoric keeps on escalating. It started with the
But there seems to be good, positive reaction from many voters to what he says. He continues to rise in the polls.
Of course, and that is true, because the fringe elements, what he's given is given a voice to the fringe elements, and he's kind of what they called sparked an insurgency. So all those things, think about 30 years back when we were talking about all the homosexuals should be hanged, all the gays should be killed. Nobody.
Well, I don't remember presidential candidates in this country making those kind of statements. Do you?
True. Oh, yeah. So now this time the presidential candidate has actually come out, and he's crossed the Rubicon. So there is now no going back. He's poisoned the well.
Let's talk about your T-shirt, hashtag not in my name. I like the idea you're saying in that. I think Muslims do not support ISIL and ISIS and the killings that have gone on in this country and elsewhere.
Yeah, what we are saying very loudly and clearly is that please do not use my name when you go around perpetrating those acts. You are murderers, rapists, and thugs, and I am taking my name away from you, and I'm saying use your real name instead. Call what you are. And you are terrorist, so go ahead and use your name.
Well, but you would agree, I think, these terrorists or extremists, whatever you want to call them, who engage in mass killings, often willing to kill themselves, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, ISIL, whichever term you prefer, they do have a couple of things in common. They seem to hate Westerners, and they're all Muslims.
Yes, because that happens to be, and most of their victims are Muslims too.
Oh, many of their victims are Muslims.
I would venture to say 95 to 97% of their victims of ISIS are Muslims, right? Of the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, not even 1% support them. So
But they often say that they're acting in the name of Islam. or that they're following the faith. You're here to say that's not true.
Well, it's exactly the same comparison. The gentleman who went to the clinic in Colorado, he was also saying the same thing. He was saying, I'm an army of God. Joseph Kony in Uganda, he's been murdering people for, 20 years. He's kidnapped 66,000 children. And here is the most convoluted part of his logic. He says, I'm doing this to support the 10 Commandments.
Your reaction in Kansas City has been very positive from other groups. People have gathered to support you, sent you notes of consolation and saying they're not in favor of banning people who are Muslims from this country. And you have an event coming up to show your appreciation.
We've had so much love and support from our neighbors that we're not even aware that they were there in our area. We've had so many emails, and those are the people that need to speak out louder and put an end to poisoning the well, the way I put it.
And you have an event coming up, right?
We have an event coming up tomorrow, and this is a very informal event from
Friday.
5 o'clock onwards, where we will just accept anybody who comes in with any question. There are no rules. There are no limitations.
That's at the Islamic Center.
Islamic Center of Johnson County, 9001 West 151st Street. If you could also post it on your website, I'll be happy to give you the address. But anybody can come in, and all those questions that were there, bring them on,
Well,
ask us.
Time for my questions has ended. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate your joining us here on Ruckus. That is Arif Ahmad with the Islamic Center of Johnson County. And by the way, KCPT is launching a special reporting project titled Beyond Belief, Kansas City's Mosaic of Faith and Spirit. For details, visit kcpt.org/beyondbelief. Now, let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Ron Freeman is a motivational speaker and the former executive director of the Kansas GOP. Patrick McInerney is a former prosecutor, now in private practice with Denton's. Mary O'Halloran is a media and communications consultant, and attorney Stephen J. Marakian is with the law firm of Wersch, Hobbs, and Marakian. The J stands, of course, for juridical. Welcome to all the panelists. Thank you for joining us on the last show of the year. Now, let's start by getting some reaction to my discussion with our guest and pick up on the controversy begun by presidential hopeful Donald Trump's call to ban Muslims from entering the country, at least for a while. Trump is the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination, as he has been since he announced for the office. Establishment Republicans seem fearful that if Trump wins the party's nomination, he will lose the election, and the party will suffer massive losses in the U.S. House and Senate, which the party now controls. Trump's plan to ban is said by many critics to be unconstitutional, a deprivation of due process, of civil rights, and un-American. So, Steve, is it really all that?
No, it's not unconstitutional per se. It would be unconstitutional to ban American citizens who have traveled abroad from coming back, but it's not unconstitutional for a president who has broad powers to ban certain classifications and categories. It is, in my view, un-American, and it's contrary to our values to single any group out by virtue of religion. We've always been opposed to that. We should always be opposed to it. More importantly, in my view, however, it is completely unworkable. It's nonsense. And as Marco Rubio properly said, it's not a serious suggestion, nor should it be taken seriously, nor should we waste much time talking about it because, quite frankly, it's stupid.
So this is the latest from Trump, because first it was John McCain, then it was Megyn Kelly. But here's the real question. He does this. He drops a bomb in the middle of things, and then he walks it back by degrees over the next 3, 4, 5 days. And to the point where, once the media climbs all over him, he then appears to be reasonable. He then starts, because his first comment was, I don't know if it's for 3 days or 3 years. I'm just saying.
More importantly, he wants to appear to be the victim, which is exactly why those who support him, they love this idea that it's us against the world. Donald Trump is a fool and a buffoon.
Now, about a religious... Hang on.
He's a fool and a buffoon.
In terms of a religious test, that in the Constitution only applies to people running for public office. There should be no religious test.
Well,
hang on. People, Mary, hang on. People coming to the United States, wanting to come to the United States as immigrants, have no constitutional rights. And a president has vast authority in
Right.
terms of dealing with immigrants. Never before has a group been banned because of its religion.
You're right.
But
Well,
President Carter banned people from Iran
Yes.
during the hostage-taking circumstances.
Not based on religion.
Okay, I want-
of itself, it's not unconstitutional
Okay.
to say
That's the
things
only
of that
point I was
sort.
trying to make.
But the program itself would be unconstitutional. Cannot ban certain people in a program passed by the Congress. First of all, it never passed the Congress. This is
Well, first of all,
just
I mean-
I want to get Ron
First
to
of all,
weigh
the
in here now.
Constitution doesn't give any rights to non-Americans, so I don't know that you can say that's a problem. But he tapped into an emotional, reactionary base politically. And so when he puts this out there, as we're going to, basically close the borders and not allow this group to come into that group, people that think they need to be protected from ISIS are going to make that sounds good. So he's appealing there.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's not going to happen. It's impractical, first of all, and it's wrong. It's just wrong.
And he knew that
Well,
going
and-
in, so I mean,
Yeah.
strategically,
And the Congress would
he may be
never
a fool.
pass.
Right.
He may be a fool and a buffoon, but there's strategy behind this.
The Congress would have to
absolutely.
pass such a
The
thing.
I
amount of
agree.
attention that
All
he
right.
draws to his campaign.
This is part of
that's what he's
the
after. It's
Republican
political.
plan to create this atmosphere of fear of Muslim people.
I think the liberal
And
media is putting it out there, but that's just my story.
putting it out there. Everyone's putting it
Everybody's
out
putting
there
it
because
liberal
he's
media.
There was a Republican
So-
debate Tuesday night, and none of the candidates, save perhaps Jeb Bush, really went after Donald Trump much.
Lindsey
But
Graham did.
But that was that debate nobody
Oh, the
watched.
undercard, yeah, sorry.
But the big news, I think, from the debate is when Trump was asked by Hugh Hewitt, do you vow that you will not run as a third-party candidate? And here's what Trump said.
I am totally committed to the Republican Party. I feel very honored to be the front runner, and I think I'll do very well if I'm chosen. If I'm so fortunate to be chosen, I think I'll do very well. Polls have come out recently say I would beat Hillary. I will do everything in my power to beat Hillary Clinton. I can promise you.
Can we believe him that he will not run as a third-party candidate if he
think-
doesn't get the
I
nomination?
think we
Would
can
you,
believe him.
if you were him, would you make that pledge? Of course you would. Would you mean it? Of course you wouldn't. I mean, this is a juggernaut for him and his folks.
Well, but
and
wouldn't he
it's not
find
gonna
it
stop.
perhaps if he starts to fall in the polls and is not the Republican nominee, his chances to be elected would be minimal as a third-party candidate. All he would do would be
too
guarantee
invested.
Hillary
Well,
Clinton
Well, he's
the
too
presidency.
invested and he's too egotistical. He's going to
Well,
stay in if he
this
can. He
feeds
will.
one of the theories of some
hope he stays in.
Republicans that he's
That
in league
screams a whole lot.
with Hillary, and then if he wants to run as a third-party candidate, ultimately to make Hillary's march to the White House successful. I don't think, I mean, he's no dummy. He doesn't believe any of this stuff. He's a smart guy. He's playing to the base of Republican voters who apparently do believe this kind of thing. that
Okay,
he's
we got to
putting
move
out.
on. I want to ask the two Republicans on the panel one-word answer. Who would you like to see be the Republican nominee?
Marco Rubio.
Cruz.
Ted Cruz, okay. Supporters say the e-tax is essential to Kansas City because it's an enormous part of the budget and should not be eclipsed by the state. Although a public vote on the tax is set for April, a state lawmaker wants to preempt the vote and outlaw the tax by legislative action. If successful, the tax would end at the conclusion of 2017, presumably giving the city time to adjust its budget. It should be noted that the plan comes from State Senator Republican Kurt Schaefer, who is running
clearly
for
this is
Attorney General
language
next
from the
year
insurance
and
industry.
has received
And I
significant
understand
financial support from
But
Rex
what I don't
Singfield,
see
a longtime critic of the
anything
e-tax. Supporters say the idea of ending the e-tax makes them elated. Opponents say the idea is egregious. Which view of the e-tax will ultimately be eliminated? Mary?
Well, the one that I elucidate on.
Elucidate doesn't begin
Can't
with
come
an
up
E,
with
does it?
that.
No,
Well,
okay.
it does. It starts with an E.
Okay.
What was the question?
I don't know.
The
Which
question-
side is going to prevail?
Well, which side is going to prevail is exactly the one that prevailed in 2011. We had to, because of Rex Singfield and his right-wing friends, passed this ridiculous attempt to control, by whatever means possible, the financial stability of the city of Kansas City. And guess what? 2011, this went to the voters, and 78% of the people who went to the polls in Kansas City, Missouri, supported the earnings tax because they're smart people and they know that they want to keep their city financially stable. By the way, that was right after a mayor's race, and the mayor's race polled by half the voters, and this got a much higher percentage. It's being, this bill in the legislature is being put forth by Kurt Schaefer, and everybody knows that Senator Schaefer is running for Attorney General.
Which I said in the introduction, and is financially supported by Rex Singfield.
And what difference does that make? Well, it's all about the money,
Well,
Mike. He has
Barry,
written him a check for $750,000. Now, you know, it's not hard to tie those two things together.
Patrick, it's one thing to have a public vote, and Kansas City did, but this legislation, if it were to pass, would preempt the public vote in April, as I understand it, and this is a Republican legislature.
Right, it'd be a wind down, but I think it's going to be much less about Democrats and Republicans than it is about Kansas City and St. Louis and outstate.
Right.
And I think even Ryan Silvey said, you know, look, this is interference with Kansas City's right to choose. This is interference with St. Louis's right to choose. And I think you're going to see the lines drawn around the cities rather than blue and red. The issue is, are we going to do this 5-year dance every 5 years? I mean, and roll out all the stats about 800 cops and 500 firefighters and all the public services.
What would happen? Let me ask you this: what would happen if, and I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say the e-tax were taken away from Kansas City? What would be, Rod? What would be the consequences?
Oh, I think it'd devastate the city. I mean, it would compromise every important thing about, you know, whether it's law enforcement, you know, fire department, just basic services would be wrecked. Well, not they're perfect yet, but you have a lot of problems. It's not going to pass the governor's desk.
Well, the city
Well, he'd certainly veto it.
It's not. Yeah,
sure.
The city would have two choices: the sales tax and the property
They could just
tax.
raise other taxes. Right?
And of course, the sales tax is what? Right now, it's somewhere close. Most restaurants and most retail places somewhere around 8 or 9%.
Right.
So that's not a possibility. And of course, they all know this. Rex Sinkfield's effort to control politics in Missouri on the Republican side is almost complete. He has given $1 million to Catherine Hanaway, his favorite candidate for governor. He's given $1 million to Ms. Randalls for lieutenant governor, $750,000 to Schaefer, and $1 million to the next guy.
It's good to have money.
But which, by the way, he has every right to do.
Yes, he does.
I'm not saying he doesn't have
I
a right.
understand
My contention was that he
yeah.
has purchased the Republican Party in the state of Missouri,
Steve,
and they've stayed bought.
Steve, a key selling point for the e-tax when it comes to a public vote is that it's imposed on a lot of people like you who are wealthy and live in Johnson County.
Yes, and this is why I support the e-tax, because as a wealthy person, I want to support. No, I believe the e-tax should stay with Kansas City, and I think it should be a Kansas City issue, not a state issue. As a conservative, I believe that communities should be able to impose these kinds of taxes. I think it's very important for people like me. We need the infrastructure. We benefit by the infrastructure, and we should pay a certain portion back.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with the e-tax, and I think it's very important and should stay.
Two attorneys on the panel, Schaefer, running for Attorney General, says the e-tax is outdated, dysfunctional, and certain provisions are clearly unconstitutional.
Right.
And there has been a Supreme Court case involving earnings taxes. Do you have any concerns about its constitutionality?
From what I know, I don't, and here's why. Because it's an equal tax. It doesn't tax at a higher percentage for out-of-state residents, and there is an equal offset for payments into the earnings tax. Now, that makes it sound pretty easy. That's a complex decision,
Right.
and the difference between states and counties and municipalities is really where that's going to lie.
You generally agree, Steve?
Absolutely. I would never disagree with the learned McInerney.
All right.
I need to drop the mic and go.
All right, we're going to
Move downhill from here.
We're going to move on now. The long-awaited report on the future of Kansas City International Airport confirms what we've been hearing. It costs more to renovate and refurbish the airport than it does to build a new one. Cost difference is about $40 million, $964 million to build, about $1.1 billion to renovate. Now the waiting continues. The Kansas City Council expects another report in May. Now, if that's approved, final design plans can be formulated, and ultimately, voters will be asked to approve the package. Even if that happens, it will still be several years before there's a new airport for Kansas City, and there are still possible roadblocks. Some new council members and a longtime Congressman, Sam Graves, have doubts about the project, and those doubts may be shared by a lot of voters. How do you see the issue playing out, Patrick?
I think the issue plays out. I think the issue continues to be one that is deliberate and intentional and studied because this is hard stuff. I don't know if you read the report, but I mean the report delves down into literally square footage by area and the amount of area that can be used for certain purposes and security issues. So what we know is that this is hard stuff, and I think most of the city council is doing a good job of being diligent. I think they have a lot of hard work to do, and I think to master this issue, it takes a lot of work. All we've heard out of Sam Graves is it's not going to be as convenient as it was, which is a 10,000-foot opinion without much information.
Well, and he says also he doubts that renovating would be more expensive than building a new one. How influential, Mary, is Sam Graves, 6th District Congressman?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say 1.
Yeah, on this kind of a matter?
Given that this will require some federal funds and some federal
So he's
action.
not very influential. Is that what you're saying?
She's putting
No,
him
I think,
at the top.
I'm putting him right up there at the
10 to
top.
1. Okay.
Oh, you bet. 1, 10.
Okay, so he is. He's
1.
very. Okay.
Yes, top of the list. Generally, the Northland's not excited about this, and for various reasons, too political and intricate to go into in the time we have to discuss this. I'm sorry that I disagree with your generally positive view of this. This is the first report. This was a report pretty much designed to promote the mayor and the council and the Citizens Commission attitude toward whether to have a brand new, bring in the bulldozers and have a brand new straight shot that the airlines no doubt would prefer, or to renovate and redesign our current airport. Now, I'll just express a personal view. I really deeply resent the beginning attitude in this city that was put out by the aviation department that convenience is just a frou-frou issue.
Right.
It's just something that people have and they like a lot, but they can do without. Convenience is time.
Yes.
Convenience is what airports are for. So we're going to have a big question. Does the airport primarily provide increased profits for the airlines, or does it primarily serve the customers and the city of this metro area and the Midwest?
I don't think those two are opposed, though.
They have to not be, don't
I think
they?
there's certainly middle ground. There's certainly a third
has
way
to
there.
Let me get some other folks in here. Rod,
Well, I mean, I think
let me ask you a question this way. Is there any reason a new airport can't be as convenient as the current one?
Well, I just think, why do you need a new one? It's very convenient. It's very functional. I think it's secure. But at the end of the day, what's going to be the best for the?
Well, do you think it needs renovations, if not
sure,
rebuilding?
there can be some modifications there, certainly.
Okay. Let me mention a report. New study on customer satisfaction at mid-sized airports just came out yesterday. Finds KCI ranking 25 out of 33. 5 years ago, it was number 1. Problems at the airport seem to deal with accessibility and options for shopping and dining. And I would assume that's further reason to either rebuild or renovate, because something ostensibly needs to be done.
One of the factors to consider here is that we are a city that's known for its engineering and architectural firms. And if we can't figure out how to get a couple terrific restaurants and some better design for the security passage of people from outside into the plane, then I just don't believe that that's not possible.
Yeah, this is. First of all, I don't trust the studies either, because it should not cost as much to renovate. And secondly, I agree. This is not a shopping mall. Okay, it's supposed to get in and get out. We can renovate it much less cost than they're saying. We can put in some airports, but or the restaurants and so forth. But the idea is, everyone who I know, and I travel a great deal, loves the idea. They come to Kansas City and they say, "Oh my God, you can get in and out so quickly.
Yeah,
it's so much better than standing in line for 2 hours in LaGuardia." I like our airport, and I want to see it renovated, not a brand new one built.
And there you have the final word on the topic. And now it is time for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes give warm applause or critical guffaws to people and events of the news. And we start today with Mary.
I'll start with critical guffaws to the lineup of Republican candidates for president who have provided people all over the world with a negative view of what the people who want to be, the men who want to, well, there's one woman in that group, who on the Republican side who want to be president, are saying. But I want to toast today Malala Yousafzai, who is, I don't know that I pronounced that correctly, the Nobel Prize-winning young victim of Islamic terrorism, Muslim terrorism, who won the Nobel Prize for her bravery and courage and all kinds of leadership internationally. She warned the American people the other day, and particularly Donald Trump, to stop blaming violence on a religion, that you just stir up more violence in the Muslim world. Good for her.
Ron.
Great to hear from her.
I'd like to toast Eric Berry, Kansas City Chiefs number 29, first of all for his courageous battle against lymphoma, and we know how he came back from that, and the fact that he's active in the community, and recently had a toy drive and raised money for Children's Mercy. So hats off to you, Mr. Berry. Good job. Keep up the good work.
Mr. Marakian.
I couldn't decide what was more idiotic, the climate deal or the incompetence of Homeland Security, so I settled on both because they show just why Americans are so angry and afraid. The climate deal, or non-deal, is unenforceable, requires nothing of the world's greatest polluters, and does not help the environment one bit. But it will hurt the U.S. economy, and that makes us less safe. The Homeland Security policy of not looking at the social media of terror suspects is absolute lunacy. The administration is not only weak on terror, but is making us much less safe. The victims in Boston and San Bernardino are the first, not the last.
Patrick.
Representative Rick Bratton from Harrisonville and his now withdrawn bill to pull all scholarship money from anybody who protests at the University of Missouri. I thought that was a brilliant move. So he certainly gets the roast tonight. And I'm going to toast this city for this year. This is the last show of the year. So this city's had a year like no other, and I think it deserves a giant toast.
Hear, hear.
And finally, here is a triple toast to two events I attended in 1 week. A toast to the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra for its holiday special featuring singer Ann Hampton Callaway, to the Kansas City Symphony for its always excellent Christmas concert, finally to the venue where both events were staged, the Kaufman Performing Arts Center, which seems more impressive every time I go there. And so that is Ruckus for the week, and we're off for a while for Christmas, New Year's, and special KCPT programming. Ruckus returns January the 7th. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching our 18th season. Belated Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.